Well, experts tell us if you're an average American, you're going to live 25,550 days. And every one of those days, you're exchanging your life for something. 25,550 days, and every one of those days, we're exchanging our lives for something. Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes 9:10, he says, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all of your might, with all of your strength, because we all have a finite time to live. Solomon doesn't write, whatever your hands find to do it with mediocrity, safety, as little effort as possible, hoping others will do the work. No, he says this powerful line, whatever your hands find to do it with all your might. This mindset might be called the road less traveled. I want to talk about this today. Today, I want to give you 3 words that can transform your relational world with people and with God. They are the words that Henry Nouwen used for how we should commit our lives to people and God. And the 3 words are, and then some. And then some. Do what is expected, to do what is minimally required, and then some. And friends, I'm excited about this message because I believe this can rock our relational world. Whatever your hands find to do it with all of your might, and then some. I want to tell you a story from the Bible about an and then some type of person. And the story is found in the book of Genesis. As it starts out, Abraham was the father of Israel, and he was at the beginning of the nation of Israel, and he at this point is an old man, and Sarah, his wife, has died. And it is time for his son Isaac to be married. And this is a really important deal because the whole future of the people of Israel rides on this marriage. They're going to be the descendants of Isaac. Abraham has to find a wife, a great wife, someone who could be the mother of these children, raise their offspring, and begin to shape a whole people. Now, how is Abraham going to find a wife for Isaac? There are no computer dating services in those days, no dating apps, no single bars, no newspapers where Isaac could write a personal ad that said, attractive nomad searching for a female who likes to travel. Can't do it that way. In those days, they had a custom. And the custom was that their parents would arrange the marriage for their kids. The parents would just go out, find a really good candidate, and come home to the kid and say, this is who you're going to marry. For those of you that still have children at home, you might be thinking, I like this biblical custom. I really like it. Well, this is what Abraham did. He called his most trusted servant, a man named Eliezer, and he explained to him, he says, my time is almost done. I'm going to die soon, and my son Isaac, the future of Israel, needs a wife, and she needs to be a person of flawless character. She needs to be someone who will be faithful to God. He says, I want you to go back to my homeland and find the right woman for my son Isaac. So Eliezer accepts this commission, and he assembles a caravan, and he gets 10 camels laden with gifts because he knows he's going to have to give gifts to this family because he's going to take their daughter away. He goes back to a city called Nahor, and he has the camels. They kneel down outside the city, and he's standing by a well outside the city, and this is his prayer to God. God, I need a sign. I need a sign to find the right woman. And here's what I want to ask. Young women come to this well all the time. But when I say to one of the women, will you get me some water? Let one of them say, well, let me get you a drink and let me water your camels as well. And he says, God, that will be a sign that she is the one. You see, in those days, hospitality was taken very seriously, for it was a matter of life and death for travelers. It was a sign of character, hospitality. So he waits, and among the people coming and going is a young woman by the name of Rebekah. The text says that she was a woman of pure character, and the text says she was very fair to look upon. The Hebrew translation was that she was a righteous babe. It's the exact translation. Rebekah comes. Picture this, and she lowers her jar into the well and gives a drink to Eliezer. And when he had finished drinking, she says, and I will draw water for your camels too until they have finished drinking. Now here's the kicker. Do you have any idea how much one thirsty camel can drink at the end of a journey? They say up to 30 gallons, one camel. Do you remember how many camels are in this caravan? Do the math. Here is this guy, this stranger standing by a well. He asks a total stranger, a girl, can I have a drink? And she hands him a drink of water, and then she says, sure. And then, by the way, if you don't mind, I'll pull up myself another 300 gallons of water to give to your camels. This is a girl with serious biceps. Eleazar has come face to face with Wonder Woman. I mean, I carry 2-3 gallon buckets of water into the house once, and I'm in traction for 2 weeks. I love this story. Here's the story. Rebecca did everything that was reasonably accepted of her, and then some. And it was the in some. It was the in some that changed everything. It made all the difference. It changed her life. It changed history. For she went on to marry Isaac, and she began this great adventure with God, and she became the ancestor of the people of Israel, and her name is remembered and celebrated down to this day. Whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might, and then some, because it'll change your world too. Now, I want you to imagine the transformation right now. Let's make this real personal. The transformation that would occur in your relationships, in your marriage, with your children, your friendships, people you work with, in your home group, in your neighborhood. Imagine the transformation that would happen if you became an and then some type of person. And you can do this. There's a lot of things we don't have control over in this life, but we have control over this. So I want to ask you to do something right now. I want you to say these 3 words and then some, because this is the whole talk. If you forget everything else, just remember these 3 words. I want you to say them as kind of a vow. Let's say them all together with great enthusiasm, passion, and commitment. Go ahead. And then some. Say it louder. And then some. Oh, that was good. That was good. So, this is how practical this is. This week, when your child asks for you to play catch with her, and you've had a long day and you don't feel like doing anything, will you choose to follow your feelings? Or will you choose to commit time to one of the most important gifts God has given you? This week, will you determine, for a day, I'm going to water the camels too. I will do everything reasonably expected of me, and then some. The and then some might be playing catch and actually enjoying it. Maybe it's taking time to play catch and asking her, how's life going? What are your dreams and fears? Do you know how much I love you? You know, one person said this. They said, you cannot truly listen to anyone and do anything else at the same time. Yet we live in a multitasking pandemic. Maybe this week it's just slowing down to pay attention and listen to the ones that mean the most to you. For those of you who are husbands this week, you're home and you want to sit, watch TV, ignore your wife and children. That's what you feel like doing. Instead, this week, decide to commit a night of serving your wife. You will decide, just make a decision. Even though I'm terribly tired, I will treat her like a queen. I will fix her dinner, bathe the children, clean the house, wash the clothes, rub her bunions. I will wait on her hand and foot all night long. I will do everything she could possibly want, and then some. I was thinking this week, for some of you, you have done everything you can do for your children or for a friendship. And so this week, the and then some is to let them go. Because that's an act of love too. Jesus talked about this kind of living attitude, this kind of attitude in Matthew 5:41. He says, if the military demands that you carry their gear for a mile, carry it too. When Jesus was alive, Israel was occupied by the Roman Empire, and there were Roman soldiers all over the place. And they were often forced to go on 50-mile marches, and they had to carry heavy packs on their backs when they did this. So they were allowed by Roman law to draft people, to carry their burden, to carry their backpack. They could ask any person off the street to carry it, and they were required by law to carry the enemy's pack 1 mile. Here's what Jesus is saying. He says, well, of course you have to go the first mile. You have no choice. It's the law. It's the law. People resent doing it, so they just do the minimum that's required. That's all. But Jesus says, as followers of Christ, every once in a while, when you get to the end of that 1 mile, just for fun, just to blow the Roman soldier's mind, take the burden back and say, hey, let's do 2. Let me serve another mile. You know, it's interesting. In a world where people do the minimum generally, they serve only when they are forced to do it. Jesus says, do it voluntarily. And then some, and do it with joy. Now, just one quick caveat, time out here. Understand, Jesus is not talking about having no boundaries or allowing ourselves to be abused and just to do whatever people want us to do all the time. This takes discernment. This takes wisdom. This takes staying close to the voice of God to hear his whisper. Because there's going to be times where God says, hey, this is an and then some kind of moment. What Jesus is saying is this: if you really want to do life, if you want life-giving, joy-filled, sustaining relationships, find ways where you can surprise and delight people with your gifts and your servanthood. Not begrudgingly, not with a checkoff list. When you get to the end of the mile, go another mile. I love what Scott Peck said about love. He says, when we love someone, our love becomes real only through our exertion. Through the fact that for that someone, we take an extra step or walk an extra mile. Love is not effortless. To the contrary, love is effortful. Here's the counterintuitive truth. It's and then some people who really live. It's and then some people that I'm attracted to, that I want to be more like. It's the Ecclesiastes 9:10, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might, people who really live. And I was thinking this week as I was preparing this, I am so inspired by so many people who are a part of this Live58 church, because so many of you are and then some type of people. Working with Dave Hessler and Powerhouse Ministries and the Orangeville Food Bank and the Orangeville Farm, and on and on and on. And then I thought this week about Chad Earleborn from World Vision, a partner with us. He's spoken here before. When we were doing our 6K walk run, he walked and ran 32 miles up an 8,000 foot summit to raise, as one individual, he raised over $10,000 for clean water, liberating hundreds of families from dirty water. Chad walked, ran for clean water, and then some. And the world notices, friends. They notice when people live this way. This is a story from Tom Peters, who writes exclusively on leadership. He talks about an executive from a national retailer who wanted to buy a suit, and his daughters and wife were Nordstrom fans. So they constantly bugged and pestered him to shop at Nordstrom. And he was so fed up with the talk that he went because he needed a suit badly, and a sale was going on. And the service in the store was really good, he had to admit. He bought 2 suits, one that was on sale and another at full price. Now, Nordstrom promises same-day alterations, except if there's a sale going on, then the suit will be altered by the next day. So he comes back the next day at 5:45 to pick up the suits. He needed his suits for his trip that night. To his surprise, even though he'd only been there once, the salesperson greeted him by name. The fellow trots upstairs to pick up the man's suits. 5 minutes later, passes, and the salesperson reappears without the suits. They were not finished. Though he needed the suits, our friend admitted to secret glee. Without the suit, he took off for a Monday meeting in Seattle and then on to Dallas for the big meeting of his trip. He checked into his hotel room, and up in his room, the message light informed him that a package had arrived for him. A bellhop fetched for him Federal Express, $98 already paid. Yes, it was from Nordstrom. In it were 2 suits. On top of that were 3 expensive silk ties he hadn't ordered. They were thrown in for free. There was a note of apology from the salesperson. They had called his home and learned of his travel arrangements. And with a smile of resignation, he admits, I am now a believer. Because they did their job and then some. Now, when I buy gifts for my wife, I don't usually shop at Nordstrom. So I asked the people where I do shop after I read the story, would you do something like that for me? And they said, no, we don't do alterations at Target. Here's the deal with us. Here's the deal. This is such a practical message, and I'm excited to hear the stories when we begin to move forward with and then some kinds of love. This is the deal. We often settle for just get by types of performances. Just getting by in our marriage or our families, or just getting by in our friendships, just getting by in our spiritual lives. What happened to Rebecca was not an accident, but it was amazing because she became a part of a new nation. Her name is remembered and celebrated throughout history, all because she helped a man who was thirsty and then some. And here's the point I love the most about the story. Rebecca didn't have a clue what was going to happen to her. Rebecca didn't do it because, well, something good might happen. No, Rebecca went the second mile because Rebecca was a second mile person. Jesus says, give, and it will be given unto you. Here he's not giving instructions. He's simply telling us how life works. It's the way things work. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. You see, this call to and then some is not a call to self-centeredness. It's not a call to selfish gain. What will I get out of it? It simply involves the discovery that the secret to strong relationships is joyful, freely chosen servanthood. It's living life asking the question, how can I delight and astound the people that I am in relationship with? How can I go the extra mile? How can I be an and then some type of person? Whatever my hands find to do, going beyond what is required to what will delight. So let me just get really practical. Let's just spend a few moments on two areas in our lives where God calls us to be an and then some type of person. Just two areas. And I really want you to deeply reflect on this. You know, we talked last week, the Pharisees had made 613 laws. Jesus said there's only two. There's only two. Love God and love people. Love God and love people. So in those two areas, how can you become a more and then some type of person? Let's talk about people first. Let's talk about people. Reflect for a little while now on your friends, on your family, even maybe an enemy. Maybe it's an enemy in your family, whatever it is. With the people that you are in relationship, say, you know, you're an and then some kind of friend or a spouse or a parent. I want you to rate yourself from 1 to 10. And again, there'll be no grading. Nobody needs to know, but in your mind, you know, where are you at on the scale? 1 meaning you are not an and then some kind of person at all, to 10 meaning you have arrived. And if any of you say you're a 10, you can turn this off right now. You don't need my help. But rate yourself. Where are you at? Where are you at in this? You know, there was a list of the 10 toughest jobs in the world, and at the top of the list was a job of being a homemaker. When my kids were young, my son was 8, my daughter was 5, my wife went away for the weekend with some friends. And I thought, man, this is going to be a party central at our house. Me and a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, this is going to be an amazing weekend. By Friday night, it looked like the big ship from Independence Day had hovered over our house and destroyed it. By Friday night, I was so exhausted from feeding, fighting, cleaning, and refereeing that the only moment of peace that I had was bath time. And bath time wasn't even that peaceful because the kids kept trying to crawl in with me. I want you to rate in your relationships, rate yourself. Where are you at? There's no beating up here, but maybe you say, well, you know what? I've been kind of selfish. I'm a 3. Maybe you say I'm a 7. Wherever you're at. You know, if you're high up on the scale, then your relationships with people have deep channels of communication that are open. If you're high up on that scale, you think in creative and delightful ways how you can serve those you love. Yet, if you're high up in there, the people you love, you know their love language, and you love to surprise them and serve them in expressive and creative ways, and then some. You express affection for people in creative ways. When my daughter was young and I would put her to bed, I would always say this, have I ever told you how much I love you? And she would play the game, no, Daddy, you haven't. I said, I love you this much. And my daughter would say, Daddy, stop. I can't take any more love. Are the people in your life, do they say to you, stop, I can't take any more love? If that's the case, then you're pretty high up. If you're kind of low on this spectrum, the truth is this. At home or in your relational world, you just try to get by. You just generally follow the path of least resistance. Your idea of sacrifice and servanthood is handing the remote control over every once in a while. Where are you at on the scale? Now, I just want you to kind of identify where you're at on the scale. And this week, try to take one step up. If you're a 3, don't try to become a 10 this week. If you're a 7, just bump it up to an 8. If you're a 4, bump it up to a 5. Just take a step. Because we can all just start forming some and then some habits. This is not about going backwards, beating ourselves over the past. It's right now, wherever you are at, just take a step forward and say, in my relational world, and again, it could be with a difficult member in your family that you've been ignoring and just not wanting to address it. It could be with a spouse. Whatever it is, just take an and then some step this week. Don't expect something in return, but I guarantee this, you'll experience a joy you haven't experienced in a long time. Secondly, our relationship with God. Love God, love people. Our relationship with God. Are you an and then some type of person in your relationship with God? And again, I'd like you to rate yourself here. Are you high up in that where you are really trying to love God in a lot of ways, or are you down below? If you're high on the scale, then you would say, I diligently seek on a regular basis to know God. What's great about this is true if you followed Christ your whole life, or if you're just a seeker, just beginning your faith. You can be high on the scale if you're committed to saying, I want to be and then some kind of relationship with God. If you say with integrity, I'm diligently seeking to know Him, seeking to know His passions, seeking to know His empathy. If you're saying, I want to know His love, especially His love towards those who've been marginalized and have faced injustice. For those that are high on the scale, their desires are to know our God who has created every tribe and nation and color and language in His image. Where are you on the scale? A 1 on the scale would be someone who just says, really honestly, in my relationship with God, I'm just skating by. It's not a real priority. I just ask, what are the minimal requirements? When you're in college and you just say, what's going to be on the test, that's kind of you drifting through your spiritual life. You decide where you're at on this. And again, this is not beating yourself up. But if you're a 3, just try to go to a 4 this week. Just if you're a 6, try to go to a 7. Just take one step this week. Just one. Sometimes a powerful, you go, where do I begin? And let me just say this, one of the most powerful ways of getting to know God better is just showing up. Just showing up. We're going to put this on the screen, but Lectio 365 as a church, it's an app, and for 10 minutes every morning we wake up and we can just listen to scripture and wisdom, and it kind of gets us projected and focused in our relationship with God. I would encourage you to download it. It's free and it's powerful. A couple weeks ago, my brother-in-law was in town, and we were in the morning driving to the Orangeville Food Bank to serve. And he had never done it before. And I said to my brother-in-law, hey, let's listen to Lectio 365 on the drive over. For 10 minutes, we listened. And ironically, because God is into irony, the whole message was on paying attention to people that day, watching and listening and loving them. We got to the food bank, and my brother-in-law said, you know what? My brain is in a much better spot to love the people we're going to meet today. Just show up, and you'll take a step up on the scale. It's one of my favorite lines, but Brennan Manning's going away for 7 days, a silent retreat with God, and Larry Crabb asked him, well, what does this do for you, Brennan? And Brennan says, I don't know what it does for me, but I think God delights and takes pleasure when I show up. So, it's a practical message today. In your relational world with people and with God, how can you take a step up in servanthood and being an and then some type of person like Rebecca? How you can go the extra mile, as Jesus asked. Because here's the good news. Let me wrap this up. Here's the good news. God calls us to be and then some people until our very last breath. We may retire from our vocations, but we never retire from being and then some people. In fact, this is the good news. We can get better as we get older. As Charles Schultz says, just remember when you're over the hill, you begin to pick up speed. I don't know how he meant that, but I think that's a great thing. When we get over the hill, we begin to pick up speed in our character and who we are. We can get better as then some people as we get older. Why? Why can we get better as we get older? Well, it's because we have experience. Hopefully we failed enough to have some humility. You know, when we're younger, we tend to be selfish and self-centered. As Oscar Wilde says, I'm not young enough to know everything. But we've experienced loss. We've discovered our strengths and our weaknesses. We're not trying to be all things to all people. And this is it. As we grow older, hopefully we discover what really matters. God and the relationships around us. Paul encourages us till our very last breath, be and then some kind of people. God needs you. God needs us. He says, therefore, we do not become discouraged, though our outer self is wasting away. As we get older, we can't see as well. We can't hear as well. We can't walk as well. He says, yet our inner self is being renewed day by day. We can be and then some. And we can keep getting better at this. Not for performance, but for joy and for love and for transparency and for legacy. You see, friends, we were made in the image of God, and God is an and then some kind of God. The Bible says that God created heaven and earth, and he could have stopped there, just the earth and the sun, but he doesn't. He makes solar systems in the Milky Way, galaxy upon galaxy. He made the heavens and the earth, and then some. Then he starts working on earth, and he could have made everything flat and plain like Bakersfield, but he doesn't. He makes mountains and jungles and oceans, and he makes birds to fly in the air and fish to swim in the sea, things to creep on the ground. He could have just made one. Have you ever asked yourself, why are there 500,000 species of beetles when 10 or 20 would have been enough? Well, God made one beetle and then some. God made a human being in his image, and he could have stopped with one human being, Adam, but he made another. He made Eve, and Adam looked at Eve, and Adam said, now that's a human being, and then some. Today, God loves you, and then some. Jesus came to earth, and then some. Jesus died for your sin, and then some. Jesus rose from the grave, and then some. Jesus says, I've come so that you may have life and have it more abundantly. I've come to give you life, Jesus says, and then some. On an average, we're going to live 25,550 days. And every one of those days, we're exchanging our lives for something. So now, today, this week, we have the power to decide what kind of person we want to be. For whatever your hands find to do, do it with all of your might, and then some.